We're delighted to welcome the godfather of green in the UK, Sir Jonathon Porritt. He brought the Green Party to its initial prominence and founded the sustainable development charity Forum for the Future. Please give him a huge welcome.
David, thank you very much indeed. And how fantastic to follow on after Jan with such an upbeat message from a big corporation about some of the exciting things that lie ahead of us. Which of these little buttons do I press now? That one there? Yes. Yeah, okay, that's the hard bit done. So basically, what you're hearing about today is the emergence of the next world. The world in which most of you will spend most of your lives, and in which most of the good things that you hope will happen in your lives will be a critical part of what people describe as progress. And this quote from Arundhati Roy just allows us occasionally to step back, take a few breaths, and understand the power and the significance of what is actually happening now. We've already heard from Jan that 2015 was a year to remember. These global goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, are actually pretty amazing. They're the successor initiative to the Millennium Development Goals, which came before and which came to an end in 2010. These are 17 goals that apply to every single person on planet Earth. The MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, were just for the developing and emerging economies. This covers the whole of humankind. And it covers the whole spectrum of everything that makes our lives good, whether it's to do with health, whether it's to do with sanitation, with education, with communities, with technology, with climate, with energy, and so on. So it embraces the whole of what it is that makes life work for people today. We're now committed to these goals. There are a ton of targets that lie behind them, but all countries now are signed up to this. We also, of course, have the Paris Agreement. I have to disagree a little with my colleague Jan Pronk, who told us today that the Paris Agreement was a betrayal. I don't really see it like that, I must admit. It didn't go anything like as far as we would have wanted it to do, but we got 177 nations committed to an ambitious set of carbon reduction targets over the course of the next couple of decades. The ratification process, which Jan mentioned was going to be so crucial, I think will happen far faster than you can imagine. This agreement was signed in New York just 3 weeks ago. Many countries acknowledged they were going to ratify immediately, including, and I want you to take account of this, including China. China wasn't waiting for the United States to say it's going to ratify. China was saying, we're going to ratify because this is critical to the well-being of everybody, not just in China, but across the world. So maybe it's going to go a little bit further, a little bit faster than Jan was worried about today, and I can understand that. But also, for the first time ever at one of these big conferences, the world acknowledged that this threshold figure, this 2 degrees centigrade figure, maximum temperature increase by the end of the century that will still give us a stable climate, that wasn't good enough. We now have to seek to maximize or to see no more than a 1.5 degrees centigrade change by the end of the century. And all going towards this notion of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Some companies have gone further than that, as we heard from Jan, many haven't. 2015, pretty important in other ways. Highest ever level of new investment in clean energy. And don't forget, every year now, more money goes into clean energy than it goes into those wretched hydrocarbons, into coal, oil, and gas. 329 billion. We need roughly $1 trillion a year. $1 trillion a year to do this accelerated transition. So we're a third of the way there, which isn't too bad. And last year, too, 462,000 electric vehicle sales. You probably all know this guy. Jan said that if he was referring to an American company, he might have given a little bit of credit to Elon Musk. And I do think we probably ought to give this guy a little bit of credit. He has just launched the new Tesla 3 on the 31st of March, with something of a fanfare, it has to be said. He announced that he would bring this to market in the USA and in Europe by the end of next year, 2017, for the astonishing price of $35,000. on the strength of which hundreds of thousands of people said, I want one of them. And were prepared to hand over some money to Elon Musk right now, even though it isn't completely certain that they're going to get their car by the end of next year. Forward sales on the Tesla Model 3, $10 billion. He hasn't got it all in the bank yet, you understand, but $10 billion. This is the most successful product launch in the history of modern capitalism. Just a little pointer about ways markets can sometimes be quite useful, can begin to take us in different directions. Okay, now this is the real story. As Jan was saying, we don't need to worry too much about individual technologies. This is an extraordinary story unfolding in our midst right now. This incredible creativity being brought to bear by designers and engineers in particular to improve the technologies on which we depend. And what you have here are the basic building blocks of what will make for a sustainable energy system. It's not just the individual technology, it's the system. Efficiency is critical. Without that, we can't do what we need to do. Then you've got renewables. Then you've got what most people would consider to be a really pedestrian and boring area of technology improvement, namely storage. Probably the future of humankind depends as much on this as on anything else. And then you've got more exciting stuff about grids, EVs, and so on. Think about it as a whole system story. Not just for the rich world, but for the poor world. This stuff goes global. It doesn't get stuck in the rich world like good technologies used to do, and then we'd trickle it down in that charitable way of ours to poor countries at the bottom of the pecking order. This stuff goes all over the place at the same time, because prices continue to come down all the time. This is our reality. Radical decarbonisation. You heard about that from Jan. And with the exception of what you just heard from Jan, which a lot of companies would still see as dangerous and slightly subversive blue sky thinking, not one company today that you've heard from has really nailed just how fast and how deep this decarbonisation process is going to go. This is the good news for all of you. This isn't just about energy. In every single one of these fields, I mean literally every single one, whether you're talking water, waste, manufacturing, healthcare, different kinds of land use, every single field of human endeavor today, this innovation pipeline is just bulging. It's actually hard to keep up with the speed with which new technologies are emerging. Happily, of course, as you've heard from a number of speakers today, millennials get this rather better than my generation did and are keen to be seen to be driving it for reasons to do with their own personal values, their beliefs, and because they can see that this is going to create a better world, a much better society for everybody. As David said, this is the world in which collectively is now involved. This is a platform now just over 2 years old, launched, as you heard, at One Young World before. It's a platform essentially to engage and inspire millennials, to tell the stories of those people who are making this revolution come about. And as you will see, if you scan your eye along that band there, it involves a large number of very large companies, not all of which would necessarily be seen as saving planet Earth. But the point is this: most companies today know that the world is changing and changing fast and want to be seen to be helping people bring forward those innovations, those new ideas, so that we can get some of this success banked faster than would otherwise be the case. It isn't really markets that are the problem. Actually, it's poorly regulated, corrupt, and unaccountable markets that are the problem. And each of those three things, poor regulation, lack of accountability, and corruption, are actually more to do with governments not doing the job they should be doing to make markets deliver for all of us. So we celebrate the fact that companies want to help make this stuff happen. And part of what we did with Collectively, as you heard from David, was to organize a competition, because we are in touch with large numbers of very bright young people out there doing amazing things in their own lives, bringing forward new solutions in a very practical, hands-on way. So we launched this competition, and we asked people to apply with their own success stories. They weren't allowed to be completely blue sky thinking. They had to be deliverable in practice today. And out of the dozens of applicants that we had for this competition, we selected 2 winners, who you've already been introduced to here on the stage. And this was a wonderful thing for us, because we had no idea where they were going to come from, as you could imagine. It could have been from anywhere around the world. But we were pleased to get 2 really outstanding examples of what young, successful innovation looks like today. So this is Guru Grutli-Seim from Norway, who will be the first up on the stage. She is here from One Earth Futures, and she will be followed by Leroy Marzeru, who will talk to you about the work he's doing with Green Pact. Well, Leroy, thank you very much indeed. Leroy almost didn't make it into the competition, really, because we counted millennials as people between the ages of 18 and 32, 34, take your pick, really. Leroy is 18. So this has been done while he's still been at school. And just made me think a little bit about, us oldies and the millennial slouches out there, just how much we got to get on with this stuff. So thank you, Leroy, and thank you, Guru, for that too, which was a wonderful presentation of what happens when you get fired up by an idea, literally, and then won't let go of it until you find the right people to bring it to fruition. That's exactly what this kind of pattern of entrepreneurialism is all about. So really, this is it. This is the extraordinary conclusion. Because obviously, my world, the world of sustainability and the environment, has historically been a world dunked deep in doom and gloom. And not surprising, because if you think about the prospects for humankind if we don't change our ways, they are not very good. They don't look very shiny. They don't look very hopeful. They don't look upbeat. But when you take into account what we now know about the state of the planet and our part in that emerging reality, we begin to see exactly what we have to do and what we can now do to turn this around before it is too late. That's the story. But you've also heard today, which is brilliant, because what is wonderful about today is this combination of different voices that you've heard. What you've heard about today is it is not just about technology. It's very easy to get excited about technology, to see the difference it can make in people's lives, and sometimes get too excited about technology, because you've heard today a lot of very important additional elements in this transformation process. You heard from the amazing Robert Swan just how important it is to dig deep into our emotional reserves to find that source of hope. You heard from a lot of us speakers how important it is to find that sense of empathy with people elsewhere in the world, that sense of solidarity, the commitment to social justice. You don't get a sustainable world without a commitment to social justice in that world. It just won't happen. And you heard from Jan and Christine Milne and others how important it is to be activists, to be really engaged in the processes that help bring forward these ideas, that enable markets to do a better job, that get the politicians into the place where they can, at long bloody last, be useful for a more sustainable world. We need all of those ingredients as well, and that means we have to work overtime for that. My last thought, you probably need a little tiny smidgen of anger as well. I'm not sure that anger's really quite a young one world sort of story. I don't think... Is anger okay? Thank you. Kate's given me permission to do a little bit of anger at the end. And you do need a little bit of anger, and you need a little bit of anger because of the very poor job that we have done around this whole set of issues. The fact that we've left so much of the heavy lifting for a sustainable world to you, because we didn't really do very much. So whatever else you do, you absolutely need to go on holding us to account until that day when we will have got it all sorted out together. Thank you.